Hello, my name is Renee Rogers. This is my business report, Moving into the Future of Education, a new way to educate using technology at our fingertips. The future is now. As the educational facility here in Fresno, California, the administration at Kings Canyon Middle School needs to accept the changes COVID 19 has placed on education and proceed to change the way students can learn by integrating in person lessons and online sources that are being implemented currently during the pandemic. The more access students have to a learning environment, the fewer dropouts there will be, and more students getting the education they need to succeed later in life. With COVID hitting the United States, there was a mandatory lockdown, and schools closed nationwide. At first, it was only thought to be for a few months at most, and yet, over a year later, many school districts have not allowed students to return. Most education is being done at home, either being homeschooled by their parents or using teleconferencing services like Zoom or Microsoft Teams. Paul Reville, a former Secretary of Education for Massachusetts, has been keenly aware of the financial and resource disparities between districts, schools, and individual students, stated by Liz Mineo in an interview article from the Harvard Gazette, written on April 10, 2020. They go on to state that the school closings due to coronavirus concerns have turned a spotlight on those problems and how they contribute to educational and income inequality in the nation. There was already a shortage of resources for education throughout the states, and after COVID, the struggles have increased even further. Liz Mineo asked Paul Reville how much of a setback he thought would be in store for students after the pandemic. Reville responded with, "Children come from very different backgrounds and have very different resources, opportunities, and support outside of school." He continued to state, "We tend to regard our school systems uniformly, but actually schools are widely different in their operations and impact on children, just as our students themselves are very different from one another." One of the biggest obstacles the education system has faced in the past is the different regions of schools and their students. There are low-income areas that struggle more than others. Some families have both parents working and unable to have their younger children at home alone, and need a structure like school to keep them safe. Other families may not have viable transportation to and from school, and may not be close enough to a school bus drop-off point. Sometimes it could even be due to health, or the health of a family member, and the stay-at-home option is the only option for some of our students. CNN News' Evan McMorris Santoro wrote in the article, "The dropout rate in the United States was on a steady decline in the years before the pandemic. According to the U.S. Department of Education, the dropout rate for high school students fell from about 10% in 2006 to about 5% in 2018. It goes on to say that the national dropout numbers for this school year are yet to be released, but anecdotal evidence from across the country shows steep decline in attendance, a rising number of failing grades, and shrinking enrollment. With data like this, Reville was correct to bring up, generally speaking, the most economically challenged in our society will be the most vulnerable in this crisis, and the most advantaged are more likely to survive it without losing too much ground. Also, other students won't have access to anything of quality, and as a result will be at an enormous disadvantage. The longer schools are out of session, and each school district holds different alternatives, the more detrimental effects could set back education in America as well as here in Fresno, California. Isabel Sofia Diepa with the Fresno Bee mentioned that despite the shutdown, Fresno, Clovis, and Central Unified School Districts all outperformed the state graduation rate for the class of 2020, which was 84.3%, according to data from the California Department of Education. Numbers show that remote learning helps raise the number of graduation rates, keeping students in school and learning in an advanced and safe manner. This is a slide that with data acquired from the 2020 American Community Survey census data. This is Fresno, California's education attainment breakdown. As we can see here, this chart shows 18.4% of people that have taken the survey have less than a high school diploma. 22.8% only have a high school diploma. Most of the other is some kind of college, associate's degree, bachelor degree, or higher. That's 18.4% without a high school diploma and 22.8% with only a high school diploma. These are numbers that we need to increase. With this slide, this is the Kings Canyon Middle School in Fresno, California, data acquired from publicschoolreview.com. This chart goes up to 2018. It shows the total students throughout the years, as well as the student to teacher ratio throughout the years up to 2018. Even though slight, we can clearly see the decline in enrollment numbers for our school. This is something that really needs to be worked on, looked at, reviewed. We can increase these numbers. Previously, the only option this nation had for K-12 education was mainly brick and mortar facilities. The online option would mostly come into play with college-level courses. Schools have been modernizing with the growth of technology for years, removing the chalkboards, adding touchscreen projection screens, etc. Textbooks were often outdated and bulky as well, too heavy to carry back and forth, though sometimes students still had to. Before COVID, some schools were beginning to trial using iPads in the classroom, or small laptops, and testing out various applications and digital copies of textbooks. After COVID, most schools had to close and move towards ways to learn remotely. New innovative ideas are being added regularly, so why not continue this trend now? Adding a camera to our classrooms and being accessible virtually can increase enrollment numbers, including those who may have difficulties attending in person. This bimedia style of teaching will soon be the preferred method of teaching and will allow for questions and learning through the most convenient practice for each student. As long as parents are working, education will never be online only, as schools are entrusted with the safety of the students while their parents are away from home. If we allow options to be in class or to be at home and yet still obtain the same education that each student is has a right to, this can increase the success rate of our students' futures. Making education more accessible and more straightforward to attend will help increase students' success rates instead of rising dropout rates here in Fresno. Being forced to find other means to work around COVID has shown many educational facilities that online K-12 classes can be a possible future if integrated into the system that was already in place prior to the nationwide shutdown due to the pandemic. Adapting with more technology into the classroom is a great way to give educational access to those who might not be able to attend brick and mortar classes, but can continue to increase their academic endeavors for higher success in their future. Let's work on increasing our enrollment numbers here at Kings Canyon Middle School and get education back to the fingertips of our students, whether in person or at home. The future is now. Thank you for watching.